I watch a lot of movies, and this year I watched 27 new movies from 2024. I decided to go ahead and rank them all from worst to best. Now, if there's a movie that didn't make the list, it means I didn't watch it. This isn't a definitive, these are the best movies of the year. This is a definitive, here's everything I've watched, and then I'm going to rank them. So I didn't get to see Alien Romulus. I still haven't seen Nosferatu or the new Bob Dylan, Timothée Chalamet movie, so apologies for that, but also I kind of want to get this video out by the end of the year. If you are interested in hearing my thoughts on those movies, then follow me on Letterboxd, because as soon as I see them, I'll probably put a little review up. Also, if you're not interested in hearing me talk about a specific movie, then feel free to go down to the description, and then there should be timestamps where you can click on any movie, and then you can hear me talk about it. This year was very eclectic for me, so I understand if you don't want to hear about a sports documentary, or you don't want to hear about this specific superhero movie. I get it, it's fine. So without further ado, these are the best and worst movies I've seen of this year, ranked from worst to best. The Dynasty New England Patriots is an Apple TV Plus documentary that really intrigued me. For those unaware, the New England Patriots were this dynasty that constantly won Super Bowls, and this was around when I was a kid, so it was a very long period of time. Beyond them winning all these Super Bowls, though, there was so much drama going on. There was Deflategate, there was the whole Aaron Hernandez thing where he murdered 3 people and he was just one of their players. And what intrigued me the most was that we were getting Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and Robert Kraft all in one documentary where they were all being interviewed separately. And that just seemed fascinating to me because a lot of these people haven't actually publicly talked about things like Deflategate or the Aaron Hernandez thing beyond just the typical PR stuff. It's like, great, we're getting like a Michael Jordan Last Dance sort of documentary, but for the Patriots, this would have been awesome. And the thing is, it was pretty good. If the last episode didn't happen, I would have been like, oh yeah, this was a phenomenal documentary. I wish they would have gone more into detail on certain things, but that last 10th episode, it's kind of like a mini-series, but I'm still going to count it because I'm pretty sure it's feature-length when you add it all together. The last episode kind of recontextualizes the entire documentary, and it shows what it really was. It was a hit piece against head coach Bill Belichick. This was produced by Robert Kraft, and when you realize that those two had a falling out, and that this entire movie is just Robert Kraft giving Bill Belichick the middle finger, it's like, oh man, I watched propaganda. That's what this was. It was insanely disrespectful to Bill Belichick, and I say that as someone who's kind of indifferent towards the whole drama that happened between Belichick, Kraft, and Brady. Like, I don't care. Like, I really don't. But this was just so blatant that it's like, oh man, I really wanted just a fair and neutral documentary about this entire dynasty, and I didn't get it. So as a result, it's the worst film that I've seen this year. Roadhouse. This is the Jake Gyllenhaal Amazon Prime one where Post Malone showed up at the beginning, and that was kind of funny. But yeah, this was like a nothing movie. Jake Gyllenhaal normally has a ton of charisma, but here, none of that was present. This is a very run-of-the-mill type of movie, and it just was very forgettable, all things considered. I didn't like it one bit. I haven't seen the original Roadhouse, and at this point, I don't even know if I want to, because this just seemed like such a basic, bland concept for a movie. It might be good, I don't know, but I'm just saying, with what I saw here, not interested. Salem's Lot is another remake, and this one is of an old 70s miniseries, and even then, that's based on this book by Stephen King. However, I did not like the miniseries when I first saw it, the one from the 70s. I thought it was not great. It felt like a feature film that was stretched into being a miniseries, and that's kind of what it really is. So it's always been a property or an IP that I've always wanted to see done better. And unfortunately, we didn't get that here. The acting is stiff, it's all around forgettable, much like the Roadhouse movie. If anything, I forgot I watched this until I saw it in my notes, and I was like, oh, I did watch Salem's Lot, that's right. I think my biggest issue with it is just how safe it is. It didn't really try anything new, it just stuck to its guns and actually recreated a lot of the shots from the miniseries, which I just wasn't that big of a fan of. Joker Folie is a movie that I was surprised I liked as much as I did. Mind you, it's still very, very low on the list, but that's just because it's not that great of a movie. However, I was expecting this to be god-awful, and it was like, meh. Like, it was like below average. It wasn't atrociously bad. And I was actually kind of upset that it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. The movie tries to be a bunch of different things. It tries to be a musical. It tries to be a courtroom drama. It tries to be kind of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it also tries to be a romance movie. And I think that it fails at all those. I think what they should have done was stick to one idea. It should have been a courtroom drama, or it should have just been a musical, or it should have just been this. And in my mind, it's like, I don't know what they were thinking. The problem with this movie being a courtroom drama is that we watched the first movie. You know, we outright saw Arthur Fleck shoot Robert De Niro in the face. Like, that happened. We saw it. So there's no real, like, ooh, is he going to beat the charges? Because it's like, no, he executed a guy on public TV. Like, that's not going to fly. I think, if anything, the romance direction could have worked. I just wish that it was executed better. And in regards to it being a musical, I was a theater kid throughout all of high school, so I'm kind of used to musicals and I kind of like them. So for me, that wasn't really like a bad thing. I kind of enjoyed it, even though the singing wasn't the best and it was a lot of kind of like mumbling, and then they would break out into song, and I don't know. Sasquatch Sunset is one of those movies that I am just happy it exists. It's so fucking crazy that we have a movie where there's just 3 actors in Bigfoot costumes running around in the woods getting into life or death scenarios with very little dialogue. Like, this is just grunting and Bigfoot's doing Bigfoot stuff. And I kind of love it for that, but also it has to be lower because it's just... This could have been a 20-minute long short film. The cinematography is great. The score is phenomenal, but I don't know. I just wish that there was more to the film. Deadpool and Wolverine is the latest installment in the MCU. And I'm someone who kind of checked out from the MCU after Avengers Endgame. I watched the Spider-Man one with Tobey and Andrew, but like after that, I'm just like, all right, I'm done. I'm checking out. You know, like it's over. It ended nicely. I don't ever want to see another one of these. But with Deadpool and Wolverine, it came on Disney Plus, and I was like, all right, let's just put it on, see what happens. And it was very, There's a lot of nostalgia bait throughout this entire movie, and that's kind of what it runs on. I feel like a lot of the modern MCU stuff, from my understanding, has been running on nostalgia as opposed to just telling a good story. And this movie very much felt like the writers went, okay, how do we get Wolverine and Deadpool to team up? As opposed to just, where do we take Deadpool's character from here? And I know that's not really the point of those movies. They're comedies first and foremost, but you still have to tell a good story. The action was very, very forgettable. A lot of this is just a CGI fest where, you know, my eyes just kind of glazed over while I was watching it. Was it cool to see Blade? Of course. Was it cool to see Gambit? Yeah, obviously. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I didn't get anything out of it. This is just another entry in the Deadpool series where you get some crude humor, some forgettable action, and some cameos, and you call it a day. Alex Garland's Civil War was one of my most anticipated movies of this year, and unfortunately, it was not very good. The performances were fine. I thought that Kirsten Dunst did a really good job. Jesse Plemons was scary in his very minimal role. In fact, I think he kind of stole the show and had the most memorable scene. I mean, it's what everyone still uses online, the whole "what kind of American are you?" That whole scene is just so good. My biggest issue with this entire movie stems from the fact that we have no idea what the conflict is about. There's talk of the US president doing something. It's an overreach of power, and this caused, you know, California and Texas to team up. But my issue is we don't know what that overreach was. We don't know the specifics of this conflict. And I'm not looking for someone to just stop the movie and go, hey, here's the conflict, here's everything that's happening. This entire issue could have just been fixed if the characters in their countless scenes where they're just driving down the road turned on the radio and we get like a Rush Limbaugh type who explains their side of the conflict. Or we get, you know, a different type of figure who explains their side. And I'm not asking for it to be political. I'm asking for it to instead just give me context on why these people are fighting. Otherwise, I'm not invested in it. It would be like if the first Star Wars movie didn't have the title crawl and we were just thrown in to kind of like figure out, okay, so there's this thing called the Empire and then there's the Rebels, but we don't know why they're fighting. And I wish that this movie had something. It doesn't have to be a title crawl, but just some type of baseline exposition telling me what the hell is happening. Otherwise, I don't care. And I didn't care. I don't have a problem with it not being political. I like that. I think that For the most part, this is a movie about journalists. It's not about half of America is crazy, the other half is crazier, and it's just, I'm glad it wasn't really about modern American politics, and instead it was about basic journalism and integrity and all that type of stuff. I found that to be very interesting. I just wish that there was more substance to the movie itself. It's kind of funny for a channel that's so into Godzilla that I would have Godzilla x Kong at number 20 on my list. But the thing is I just saw 19 other movies that were better than this one. I already made a video going over my first initial thoughts upon seeing this movie, and I was kind of like, yeah, it's dumb fun. And it's a blockbuster, and it's not Godzilla -1 because it doesn't have to be. And after watching this movie a few more times, like I think I've seen this about 5 or 6 times, I gradually feel like I hate the movie more and more. It's like each rewatch, I would just sink more and more into my chair and go, oh god, this actually kind of sucks. My biggest issues with this movie stem from the fact that it is paced very weirdly. It simultaneously wants to be a Kong movie, and then it has to keep cutting back to Godzilla in scenes that feel like an afterthought. The CGI is a jumbled mess, and the cinematography is god-awful. There's one shot in particular that just, I think about it and I get irrationally angry, and it's the shot that looks like a car commercial. Like, just look at this. This is not something that should be in a multi-million-dollar movie. Like, this is not Hollywood to me. This just seems like something I'd see on the TV and go, oh yeah, that's a Mazda ad, or whatever car the car was. I don't care. The music is also terrible. Junkie XL should never touch a Godzilla movie. His entire score just feels like a knockoff of Akira Ifukube's work, which it kind of is. Like, he's even gone as far as to admit that.
Hooray! That was great, Squidward. All those wrong notes you play made it sound more original.
What? I didn't play any wrong notes.
Yeah, see, you're playing it like this. When ordinarily it goes like this. I'm partially doing it in the key of A minor myself.
They're doing that because they can't afford the rights to the original Godzilla theme, so they just make these cheap knockoffs, and it's atrocious. Especially after hearing what he's done with the new Sonic movie. It's like, God, why couldn't we have gotten something like that but for Godzilla? It just drives me nuts. The Bikeriders is literally missed potential, the movie. I felt that everything about it, from the cinematography to the general atmosphere and the writing, just felt so good. It was so accurate to the time. It felt so Midwest, and I just loved it. The performances were so good. Austin Butler killed it. The woman that played the main protagonist lady, she was incredible. Tom Hardy was great, but that's all it really has going for it. There is no real plot. When you watch this movie, you're kind of thinking, okay, they're going to go in this direction. It's going to get to the point where there's, Tom Hardy, he goes nuts, and Austin Butler has to, take him out or something. We're going to get a scene like that. But instead, Tom Hardy is just killed by this character that showed up randomly at the start of the movie, showed up again in the middle, and then he's the guy that ends up killing Tom Hardy. And it's kind of like, oh, that's it? That was the movie? And in fact, that's what someone said in the theaters when I saw it. As soon as Tom Hardy was killed, someone just went, that's it? It was really, really, because the movie had so much going for it, and I get that it's based on a true story, but at the same time, you still have to tell an entertaining story. And this was just a narrative that went nowhere. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm a huge Ghost fan, so of course I saw this movie. It's basically just a live concert movie with some narrative pieces in between, and I'm not going to say too much about it other than I had a lot of fun with it. As a Ghost fan, it's kind of where it needs to be on this list, because if you don't like Ghost, then don't watch this movie. It's not for you. Which is something I normally hate when people say, oh, it's for the fans. But, if you don't follow their, ongoing web series, you're not going to know what the hell's happening with Papa, and then he's talking to the ghost of his dad, and then his mom is, a nun. You're not going to know anything that's happening. So it's almost like if they made, a movie out of a TV show, and then some random person watches that having not seen the TV show, you're going to be confused. It's more in that, if you don't know what the band is, you don't know what the lore is, I don't think this is going to be your thing, genuinely. It's not, high cinema or anything, but it's also just kind of I don't know, a fun concert movie with a narrative thrown in. All right, so this is the point where I can confidently say, like, everything from this movie onwards is really good, and I recommend it to people. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice blew me away with how fast the pacing was. I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she paused it, and then she went, oh my god, there's 20 minutes left in the movie, and I thought there'd be like another hour left. This is a movie with a lot of subplots that are set up, and somehow they all kind of pay off in the end. It was really surprising. I thought the cast was just star-studded. I loved Willem Dafoe as that detective cop. I thought that he was great. I loved how he was an actor in his previous life, and so he's very theatrical with everything he does. It's really good. I thought that Jenna Ortega did a great job. I thought that pretty much everyone in the cast like nailed what they were trying to do, and this feels like a return to form for Tim Burton. And I'm just really happy about that because I love Tim Burton's work, and he's been kind of putting out some duds lately, mainly because I think it's just, he was doing studio movies, so he wasn't really invested in it as much. Like, the Dumbo movie is atrocious. I think there's no one that can deny that. It's not great. But Beetlejuice Beetlejuice feels like a labor of love, and I hope that he continues this ongoing streak. Transformers 1 is a movie that I wasn't going to see initially. I reacted to the trailer on stream, and it wasn't really my thing. And it wasn't until I heard about word of mouth from Twitter that I was like, oh, maybe I should go check this out. Maybe this might be my thing. And it was fine. I legitimately believe that it is the best theatrical Transformers movie ever made. However, what really drags it down for me is the fact that the voice actors are not great. Chris Hemsworth, to me, just sounded like Chris Hemsworth putting on a deep voice. He wasn't Optimus Prime. It was just someone going, hello, I'm Optimus Prime. It wasn't like your usual Peter Cullen-esque performance. And I wasn't looking for Peter Cullen. I was looking for Chris Hemsworth to do his own thing, but to me it just felt like a bad impression.
Everyone in Iacon knows the truth.
So do I!
I think if they had real voice actors who were not Hollywood celebrities, I would be way more invested in it. But that was my biggest holdup. That was what really prevented me from liking it as much as I probably should have. The Transformers fans are going to kill me, but yeah, no, Piece by Piece was really, really good. The pacing was a bit muddled, and it did kind of feel like a Wikipedia article of Pharrell Williams being put into Lego form, but at the same time, this was just really creative and really well done. I watched this by myself, and I loved it, and then I had my dad watch it, and he knows nothing about Pharrell Williams. He is not a fan of rap whatsoever, but he loved this movie. He thought it was very, very creative, and I feel the same way. I just think that doing this in Lego form was the best possible move that they could have made. It makes it stand out from all the other biopics out there, and it was just really fun, which I think accurately reflects Pharrell Williams as an artist. I think that he is a very fun artist, and it works, especially when it needs to be emotional. Like, weirdly enough, I was like, wow, like this part's really sad, and it works with it being in Lego. Like, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did. So yeah, even if you're not a fan of Pharrell Williams' music, just go check this out. It's really well done. Late Night with the Devil is a movie that I wasn't going to see because I heard that they had used AI in the movie, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. However, I finally caved. I checked it out, and I was surprised at how much I liked it. I thought that Polka Dot Man did a great job in the lead role. I think this might be one of his best roles yet. The practical effects were really, really good, but there were some CGI parts that were like on par with like a Smosh skit. Like, some of it looked really bad. So again, sort of a mixed bag with the horror, but a lot of it works because of its sort of VHS aesthetic, and I liked that a lot. What really blew me away, and I might even make a whole different video on this, is the fact that they kind of center the whole plot around Bohemian Grove, which, if you're like a schizo conspiracy theorist like me, you'll see that and go like, okay, what the fuck? Like, this is a secret society. Like, they're outright name-dropping a secret society that multiple presidents and, like, Hollywood actors have been, like, in cahoots with, and it's... I'm not going to get into it here, but it's crazy that they even included that. Like, it was nuts. Something else that made me kind of laugh, actually, is how many opening movie production company, like, title cards there were at the start. Like, there's at least 2 minutes worth of them. I thought it was, like, a joke at first. Like, I thought that was going to, like, lead into the movie, but, yeah, it blew me away. There's, like... way too much, but I get why they have to do it. It's an independent movie. I get it, but still, like, this was nuts. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story is one of those documentaries that I'm like, I know it's going to be a hard watch. I know it's going to be very emotional. I'm still going to put it on. And it was. It was very, very well made. With what it was trying to do, I felt that it nailed it perfectly. Most people in their minds have this idea of Christopher Reeve as being the man that played Superman. Like, that's straight up what he's most well known for. A lot of other people do know him for the whole thing where he fell off the horse and he unfortunately was negatively affected by that. So this movie kind of does both. It shows him becoming Superman for the movie, and it also shows him dealing with that injury and him trying to recover from it while also advocating for other disabled people. And I just thought the movie was really well done in that aspect because people are really invested in those 2 points of his life, and to kind of focus on them and humanize him in a really interesting way, it was just a very well done documentary. Without giving too much away, Love Lies Bleeding was genuinely insane. I did not expect to like this movie as much as I did. It was so much fun, it was brutal at times, and it was everything that I wanted it to be and more. Kristen Stewart gives a phenomenal performance. I genuinely think that she should win an Oscar for this. It was that good. The movie was trippy, it was out there, and it was just genuinely a fun time. I think I highly recommend this one. Go and check it out for sure. Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. This is a movie that is sort of about Helm's Deep in a way. I hope that's not a spoiler, but in the marketing, you kind of get that gist. That's what I got from it, at least. So the reason I saw this was because I had used my PTO for work on a Tuesday because I was going to go see a movie. They have $5 movies near me, so I was like, all right, I don't care what I'm going to see. I'm just going to go see a movie, take off work, have a nice relaxing day, because I had just graduated from college, so I was like, awesome. And then I was kind of like, oh man, I don't want to see any of these movies. And I'm like, well, I know what Lord of the Rings is. I guess I'm going to go see that. And I liked it. From my understanding, this movie was made just to like retain the rights to Lord of the Rings. That was New Line Cinema's entire intentions. The voice acting was really, really solid. I thought that the general story of where it was going to go constantly had me like second guessing myself. Like, there's a character that dies very early on in the movie, and I was like, oh shit, I thought they were going to be like the main antagonist of the movie, but no, like they're not. One thing I was concerned about was that because this was a prequel, I was worried there would be too many member berries, you know, like, oh hey, remember this character, remember that character, remember this. And while the movie does kind of end that way, where you get a lot of like, oh, here's this character, here's that one, I am glad that it was very self-contained for the most part. There is one character that shows up at the very end of the movie, I'm not going to say who it is, but the actor has passed away, and I was scared shitless they're going to use AI on him. Like, when his character walks up, I'm going, oh dear God, please don't be AI. This seems so wrong. And thankfully, it wasn't AI. Apparently they used like stock audio that they already had of him from like a different take from one of the movies. Pretty cool. The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling is like one of my favorite movies of the year because of just how fun it was. The music was fantastic. Like, they used songs by Kiss. There's a song from The Darkness, I believe, in a thing called Love. And when that started playing, I was just like, all right, we're in. Like, this is great. It's also one of my favorite type of movies where it's a movie about making movies, and I just love that. Ryan Gosling's character is bumbling, but he's also just really fun to watch. Like, it reminds me a lot of his character from The Nice Guys. He has so much charisma in like every movie he's in. Even when he plays like a creepy weirdo, Ryan Gosling just kills it. So yeah, I love this one. It was really, really well done. Juror number 2, to me, at times felt like a remake of 12 Angry Men, which I'm okay with. I like 12 Angry Men a lot. And so whenever a movie kind of draws from that, I don't mind it all that much. For those that may not know, the premise of the entire movie, which I realize now I haven't really been giving plot summaries, but it's just supposed to be kind of a rapid-fire video. The entire gist is what makes it work so well, and it's that this guy is on the jury for a murder case, and he believes that he committed the murder. Yet he's on the jury, and he's not actually on trial. A different person is. And I think that premise alone, it's like, fuck, you could do so much with it. And they did. The performances are phenomenal. Clint Eastwood directed this at the age of like 96, which just blows me away. Like, I hope that man lives forever so we can keep making movies, because this, for someone that's 96 to have made this, it's incredible. Toni Collette, by the way, Oh my god, one of her best performances in her entire career. Hereditary is obviously up there, but like this is just so good. I have 2 gripes with the movie though. The first is J.K. Simmons. He did a good job. It's not about his performance. It's the fact though that he was in it that my brain went, oh, he's a member of the jury, but like you can tell he's going to be important later on, and he was. And so that kind of like threw me for a loop because it was like, oh, I wish he wasn't playing that character. I wish he was like, maybe he was the public defender. You know, it just got to a point where it was like, I know he's going to be important, so this just feels like a major red flag to me. The other gripe I have is the ending, which I won't talk about much here. What I will talk about in very vague details is that it reminded me of Return of the King, the Lord of the Rings movie, where it just, the ending, you're like, okay, great, it's going to end on that shot, and then it didn't. And then you're like, okay, maybe it's going to end here, and it didn't. Maybe it's going to end here, and it doesn't. Every single time, you're like, okay, just end the goddamn movie. It felt like the filmmakers weren't sure exactly how they wanted to end the movie, and so they just picked all the above and just had all the endings play sequentially. Regardless, this was still a very, very well-made drama, a very, very good courtroom drama that blows Joker Folie out of the water. Like, this is like, you could make a video going over like, here's Joker, here's what you should not do, and then here's juror number 2, here's what you should do. I did not expect to like Ultraman Rising as much as I did. It was one of those where I'm like, you know what, it's probably going to be a decently made kids movie at best, and that's about it. It does that thing that I kind of hate where the Ultraman suit itself is used kind of like an Iron Man suit, where the person inside still like talks and they do like quips and stuff. I prefer Shin Ultraman and like the classic Ultraman where it's almost like, not really, but it's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing where it's like the host takes over and he uses the beta capsule and then Ultraman is Ultraman. Like, it isn't like Hayata is inside the Ultraman costume and he's talking. I don't like that. That's more just personal taste than anything. However, I felt that with this movie, it was very, very well done. It helped a lot of the emotional moments, and this movie had a lot of emotional moments. I was surprised at how rich the storytelling was. If you want a Pixar movie with Ultraman in it, this is kind of what it felt like to me. And that's coming from someone who very much likes Pixar. So if you're a fan of those movies, then go check this out, because I was pleasantly surprised. Challengers is that one Zendaya tennis movie that a lot of people liked, and then I feel like no one really talks about it anymore, but they should. It's a very, very good movie. I apologize, by the way, if I keep saying like, oh, it's good, it's fun, it's great. I'm doing this kind of off the cuff here. But with Challengers, it takes a lot of risks with how it's shot. The cinematography is wild. There's one part where the camera is like in the tennis ball and it's like moving along as guys hit it. It's so nuts. When that happened, I literally I leaned forward and I was like, all right, I'm locked in. Let's do this. I felt that the non-linear storytelling approach really worked well. I think if it was linear, it wouldn't have been as effective because you learn certain things about these characters in a certain order. And while it isn't chronological order, it just works so well because of how the story is told. This is just a masterclass in non-linear storytelling. It's up there with Pulp Fiction, in my opinion. There's some great performances here. Again, Oscar-worthy performances, in my opinion. It was just very, very, very well done with the story that it was trying to tell. I really didn't have any big gripes with it, genuinely. This is one where it was really good. I did at first have a problem with the score. I thought that it was very distracting. It was techno music being blasted nonstop, but the more I listened to it and the more I rewatched the movie, I was like, oh no, this actually works really well with what they're trying to go for. It perfectly embodies the chaos of this entire narrative, and I love that. Apologies if this section is a little bit off. I somehow forgot to talk about Conclave, even though it was literally in my notes, so I'll be doing voiceover here with some still images from the movie playing over it. Based on what you're seeing right now, I think it's safe to say that Conclave had some of the best cinematography of this entire year. There are some shots in this movie that look like paintings to me, and it's insane just how good this movie looks. The amount of detail that went into the costumes just blows me away. If this doesn't win the Oscar for Best Costumes, then I will be extremely disappointed. There's also some phenomenal performances here, like Ralph Fiennes as Lawrence. Stanley Tucci did a great job. I also loved John Lithgow. I thought that he was a very slimy cardinal, and in general, the movie is carried by its performances. The ending, which I won't ruin here, is bound to be very controversial, especially among Christians, but I think that as a Christian myself, I think it worked with what the film was trying to do and what the film was trying to say. In general, I think that the idea of basing an entire movie around a bunch of cardinals trying to select the next pope is just rich with potential, and thankfully this movie lived up to said potential. Longlegs was my most anticipated movie of 2024, and it wasn't the scariest movie in years as they were marketing it. Instead, this is more of a thriller. It's not exactly a horror movie. It's about on par with like Silence of the Lambs, where it's this FBI lady who's trying to solve this serial killing thing, but instead of meeting up with Hannibal Lecter, it kind of works where like it's almost like the killer, played by Nicolas Cage. Not a spoiler, that's just in the trailer. He sort of is like the Hannibal Lecter type and the Buffalo Bill type. This had some of the best cinematography I think I've ever seen in a movie. It is all around phenomenal. I just love how it looks. The atmosphere, so eerie, so creepy. And, you know, the way that the story unfurls, it's like, I get why some people don't like it. I get why they don't like the direction that it goes in. Again, no spoilers. But I thought that this was just so out there that it worked with the universe that the movie was kind of setting up. I just think that the marketing really kind of harmed the movie, especially how viral that first teaser went and how people, myself included, compared it to analog horror. But at the same time, it's like this just works. And I think the marketing did its job. It got butts in seats. And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. I think that this marketing kind of like scheme that they had for this movie will be studied for years to come because frankly it worked. I saw this in a packed theater and it was a lot of fun. The Substance was another word of mouth type of movie where I had no clue it existed until people were talking about it on Twitter. They're saying it's one of the best movies of the year. I watched it. I agree. It's in my top 5 for sure. Phenomenal performance by Demi Moore. Margaret Qualley was also fantastic. But Dennis Quaid stole the show every single time he was on screen. There's a moment where he's eating shrimp and it's like the most disgusting thing in the world and I love it. Every time he's on screen, the cinematographer uses this like fisheye lens so he looks all like weird and distorted and it was just so eerie, so well done. The practical effects work was incredible, on par with The Thing from 1982. It is so well done. Like, I can't get over how good this is for a movie that had a limited theatrical run. I don't even think it was in theaters for that long. From my understanding, Universal was like telling the director, hey, cut down on the gore and make the ending less weird. And the director said no, so then they sold it to Mubi of all streaming services, and what a stupid decision. I think, though, this was actually in theaters because I heard that it's made a decent bit of money. But, yeah, I would have killed to have seen this in theaters. Instead, I watched it at like 2 a.m., just like right here, and I loved it. What I really like about the movie is how it's shot. Everything is so deliberate. You get these really like pervy angles on some of the actresses, and at first you're like, okay, where's this going? You know, like, should the director be on a list like this? This is really weird. But gradually, though, as it goes on and the body horror becomes more of a thing, you realize the intention of those shots, and it's to like almost trick you, you know, like, oh, you're attracted to this part of the human body, well, great, now there's like a chicken bone being like pulled out of it. Like, it's really well done in a way that psychologically like messes with you. If you're looking for just a great narrative but also some fantastic performances, some really disgusting body horror, this is the movie for you. There are no more horror movies on the list, so if you know me, you know I love horror. This was my favorite horror movie of 2024. Hundreds of Beavers is nuts. Like, straight up, it is probably the funniest movie I've ever seen. And it's, again, one of those word-of-mouth type of movies. My dad and I had just finished watching a football game, and we were like, okay, what do we put on now? We're on Amazon Prime just looking through, and I saw Hundreds of Beavers, and I'm like, hey, I heard this is really funny. Let's just put it on. And we were going to just watch the first 20 minutes, and we were just fucking dying at this movie. It was so funny. For those that want just a quick sort of like overview of what this movie is, think live action Looney Tunes if it was actually good. There are some gags in here that are so over the top that you're just blown away at how the filmmakers even pulled it off. But most importantly, though, there's a consistent logic throughout the entire movie, and I think that if it didn't have that, then you'd be kind of like scratching your head. Like, this is a movie that very much has the potential to be very bad, but it was made by people who know what they're doing and have a very distinct sense of humor, and that logic that I mentioned maintains throughout the whole movie. Like, it's set up in the movie that beavers love poop, and so they use that as like, god damn it, like riveting cinema here. But okay, the beavers love poop, and so they use that as like traps, and so that's consistent throughout the whole movie, and you're just like, yeah, I get it. Like, that's just part of the lore, and you get it. Overall, though, this was one of the best movies I've seen. It's the best comedy for sure. Like, there are no more comedies on the list, so this is the best comedy of 2024. So well done. Technically, you could say, oh, it's from 2021 because it did like a festival run, but the creators of the film themselves, they said that this movie is a 2024 movie, so that's why it's on the list. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is a movie I didn't think I'd like as much as I did, but holy shit, they fucking killed it. It's not as fast-paced as Mad Max Fury Road. If you're looking for that, you're not going to get it here in this movie. This is more of a slower-paced Mad Max movie. You still get very heavy doses of action littered throughout. However, this is a lot like Kill Bill Volume 2, whereas Fury Road is more like Volume 1. Kill Bill Volume 1 is like action-packed, it's non-stop fighting, whereas with Volume 2, the final confrontation is just like a conversation, and that's kind of how Furiosa works as well. I always wanted to see more of the War Boys and their world that they live in and how they make the vehicles and all that type of stuff, so you get that here, but you also get a lot of really good action. Arguably, I think there's an action scene in here that is better than anything from Mad Max Fury Road. I'm dead serious. It's also a movie that leads into Mad Max Fury Road very well. Like, this is a movie that you could put on and then immediately have Fury Road queued up and it would be seamless. Like, I think actually there should be a fan cut where someone just gets rid of the credits on Furiosa and they just have Fury Road just start, because it would work perfectly well. And my number one movie of the year is Dune Part 2. This was an event, to say the least. Like, when this came out, everyone was talking about it, and for good reason. It's incredible. It's a masterpiece, straight up. I remember when I first saw this in theaters, there was this moment where Harkonnen's soldiers are trying to get up onto this ridge, and they say, climb, and then they just start floating up, and you're just sort of taken aback, and it's, oh my god, this is incredible. This is like peak cinema right here. Getting into the specifics, though, Timothée Chalamet does a phenomenal job as Paul Atreides. Like, the first movie, I was kind of towards him as Paul. I thought that he was okay. And this one, though, he really sold it as to why he should be playing Paul Atreides. And it's because he is Paul Atreides. Like, he embodied this role better than anyone else that's ever played that role before ever has. There were some massive deviations from the books, which I completely understand. I've read the books, and upon rewatching this, it's like, I get why they cut that subplot. I get why they cut that. Because if they didn't, it would have been somehow even more out there, and I think that it would have taken people out of the movie. I'm very excited for Dune Messiah, but as a standalone movie, I think that Dune Part 2 is a masterpiece.
I've been having dreams about Arrakis. I don't know what it means.